Mortal Kombat 2011, 9, whichever you want to call it, was released in, of course, 2011, and it was a reboot of the franchise. In a very clever way, if you don't mind me saying so. Uh, Now, of course, what they did was actually brilliant for the older fans who knew of the series' origin. But what they did was brilliant. It opens at the end of Mortal Kombat 7, Armageddon. Now, if you know anything about the franchise, they really didn't start doing stories and story modes until later in the franchise. I mean, the first 4 games were released in arcades first. And I think they always made like Liu Kang's ending the canon ending for the franchise, for each game in the franchise. But that doesn't always work. When they started adding story modes, you were able to basically piece together what was canon and what wasn't. But at the end of 7, well, 7 had, for each character that won, it had a ending for them. At the end of 7, you had a battle between Raiden and Shao Kahn. Shao Kahn, having defeated Blaze, gained the power and was about to basically kill Raiden. So Raiden sends a message to his past self. Or a past self, I should say. Now, of course, the thing about time travel messages is they have to be vague enough to not get someone in trouble, because you'll be literally messing with the timeline. So if a message goes that is basic enough, it can be interpreted any way. Hence, he must win. And so, what we have is a repeat of the events in the first 3 Mortal Kombat games. We go to Shang Tsung's island, where Raiden receives the message from his future self. He must win. And so, he has to now figure out what that means. Well, one thing to say about this game is that all chapters take place from initially, quote, good characters. I say initially good because Scorpion does eventually, he is a decent character. Being controlled by dark forces, he does switch. But the first 5 chapters of the game take place over the events of Mortal Kombat 1. Now, there are characters in Mortal Kombat 1 that you don't see until later in the franchise. In fact, almost every character in the game comes from the first three Mortal Kombat games, except for Quan Chi. Well, there are some others. Some of the secret characters do not appear until later in the franchise. Or literally were put in with MK Ultra or MK Trilogy or MK Ultimate MK3. But the first game is, of course, the events of Mk1, where Earth's fate hangs in the balance of Earthrealm winning the tournament. And so, we must work our way through it. Your first chapter, now you see characters show up. I mean, Liu Kang fights Baraka. I mean, not Liu Kang. Starts off with Johnny Cage. He's fighting Baraka. I think he even fights Reptile. And eventually, he doesn't think this is real until after the fact. Especially when he's told to finish Baraka, which he refuses to do. We then have chapters that follow Sonya, and then Scorpion, who is on his own quest of vengeance against Sub-Zero. Raiden warns him not to. However, he still kills the original Sub-Zero, Bihan. We also find out Jax was held prisoner on the island, so we see him show up. And Scorpion, and we see a human, Cyrax, and Sector. Or Sector. The Lin Kuei have been hired to, quote, kill the characters, kill the Earthrealm fighters. We also see Nightwolf show up and Kung Lao. Who didn't show up in Mk1. Actually, Nightwolf doesn't show up till Mk3. And Kung Lao doesn't show up till Mk2. We also see Kitana and Jade, who, again, they don't show up till number 2. Although Jade's a secret character in Mk2. Eventually, we have Liu Kang. Well, we have a chapter from Cyrax's point of view, which shows he does not agree with what's going on in the Lin Kuei. And everything else is going to blazes. Still, we get through the Mk1 chapters, finishing off with Liu Kang. And Liu Kang beats both Goro and Shang Tsung. After a fight, I believe, with Quan Chi and Scorpion combined in one other fight. I think he has to fight Reptile, but I don't recall at the moment. With that successful, of course, Shao Kahn is upset, about ready to kill Shang Tsung, when Shang Tsung suggests a second tournament. Now, if you know the second game, the story of the second game is that Shao Kahn has the tournament as proof of that he should have won. And the battle is basically Shang. The second tournament takes place in Outworld, not on Shang Tsung's island. And one win determines everything. Of course, to prove that he's not, quote, going to give up until he gets an answer that he wants, he has Tarkatan warriors attack the Shaolin Temple. We also see other characters start to show up that were only, quote, rumors or something. We have in the Mk2 chapters, we have Noob Saibot shows up. Ermac shows up. Actually, Ermac I think shows up in the first one too, in the first one's timeline. At least in this one, in the remake, Ermac is only rumored in the first two games and doesn't show up I think until Ultimate MK3 or MK Trilogy. And so we now fight literally 6 chapters where events are going down. We see Kuai Liang show up with smoke in an attempt to stop or find out what happened to his brother and trying to avoid the cyber Lin Kuei. We see Kano now dealing with Shang Tsung, Shang Tsung and Shao Kahn, giving them weaponry, because Dark Outworld doesn't have the technology we have. We see Melina come into being, and it's concluded by Raiden that the "he must win" must somehow refer to Kung Lao winning the tournament. Unfortunately, Kung Lao gets butchered by Shao Kahn. Rather cowardly. Kitana finds out the truth. And, well, Jax loses his arms after they are able to rescue Sonya. And we see all these characters are evolving, Johnny Cage is, while he was started off very arrogant and rough around the edges, you see him advancing from full of himself, completely full of himself, to a more caring individual. While he does appreciate his fame, he also realizes there's bigger things in the world than Johnny Cage. Like the world and the fate of the world. Through all these events, well, I'm trying to get ahead of myself here. Anyhow, once, Kitana learns things and Jade also learns things, they are quick to, quote, turn on Shao Kahn and help Earthrealm. But once Kung Lao is savagely beaten, and Liu Kang beats Shao Kahn, Raiden discovers that the crystal is still deteriorating. His amulet's still deteriorating. So, what's happening? I should also note that Shiva shows up in the Mk2 chapters, when she doesn't show up until Mk3 in the original trilogy of games. So we move on to Mk3, where Quan Chi convinces Shao Kahn that there is another way. This involves in the resurrection of Shiva. And to give her more power, eventually Shao Kahn kills Shang Tsung to give Shang Tsung's power to his resurrected Shiva. And Shiva is not as brainwashed as she seemed in the original part of the franchise. Again, showing the that message from the future to the past may not have gotten to the right timeline. As we play through it, Shiva proves very duplicitous. We see, of course, Stryker come into his own, working with a reformed cabal who is on the police force. We also see Kitaro, who was the almost final, the next to last fight in Mk2, fighting. And then we have Goro still showing up. As it plays out, of course, Cabal is burned, brought to Outworld by Kano. Kano tries, of course, to convince him that someone else was to blame for his fate. Cabal escapes, joining the heroes. We find Sub-Zero, now cyberized, but we're able to free him. Nightwolf has a chapter to shine in which he even makes the ultimate sacrifice. After Sindel and the Cyber Lin Kuei invade where the heroes are calling their base of operations, and nearly slaughters almost everyone, including Kitana. In fact, the only ones to survive is Raiden and Liu Kang, who were not there at the time, and Sonya Blade and Johnny Cage, who were thankfully only knocked out. It's also the signs that their relationship is evolving. I wouldn't believe that. I would not be surprised if this was because even the movie had them evolving into a relationship. Although, according to, quote, the original timeline, Johnny Cage was killed, I think, after the events of Mk2. And all part of the invasion. In fact, Raiden even prevents this from happening. Apparently it's Motaro who kills Johnny Cage, but, Raiden sort of intervenes and kills Motaro. After all this, of course, Liu Kang, thinking Raiden has lost it, and after trying to make a deal with Quan Chi, Raiden realizes what the words "he must win" means. You see, it means, you see, as the Elder Gods point out to Raiden, invasion is permissible without defeating and being won in Mortal Kombat. We cannot merge the realms. And when Shao Kahn sets foot on the in Earth realm to begin the process of merging, the Elder Gods intervene, gifting their power to Raiden, and we basically have a slugfest between Raiden and Shao Kahn, with Raiden being the victor, killing Shao Kahn. What ends up happening, however, and why Quan Chi is involved, is this is why they were there. Quan Chi was orchestrating events to help Shinnok return. And with all these great Earth Realm and Outworld warriors dead, it gives him a good, powerful Revenant army. And so what we have is basically a setup for events that would be included in Mk4. But, this was very nicely done. I do like that the ending has Sonya and Johnny together, at least at the end of MK11. I mean MK9. MK2011, you want to think about. It's a good series. It was a good game. It's good for the old schoolers who want to, relive those early days. It was beautifully done. The moves are fantastic. The addition of X-ray moves, fantastic. Although in reality, some of those X-ray moves, if they were used on somebody, they'd kill them in a heartbeat. uh, it's a beautiful game. I enjoy it. Although they didn't nerf Shao Kahn as much as they probably should have. He has always been a tough guy to beat. But it's a terrific game. It's a nice reboot for the franchise. And, you have to, it's a game to enjoy. Now, it does have the crypt in it, which allows you to unlock things, and it does have the old style of arcade mode, so to speak, with what they call the arcade ladder, where you can then get all the individual endings. And who knows, I may just do that in the future with that game. But the story mode, it's terrific. Get MK9. Play MK9. It's fun. Especially, there are some extras with it. They had downloadable content in Special Fighters, I believe. Rain, Kenshi, a new character called Scarlet, and the first of what they were going to do for future installments, putting in some movie characters, in this case being Freddy Krueger. And also, if you know where to look, you can play a Cyber Sub-Zero. And I should add one other thing. The PlayStation release of this also had Kratos as a playable fighter. That was PlayStation exclusive. And he also had a stage fatality that had options. And that's all I'm going to say about MK9. Again, great game. I recommend people play it, especially if you played the original Mortal Kombat trilogy of games. I know, we're talking games from the early 90s. Early to mid 90s. However, take care, everyone. This is Rich Kale here on YouTube, Rich Gen X elsewhere, inviting you to subscribe to the channel, and I hope you enjoyed my little Mortal Kombat 9 retrospective. Bye!